Imagine waking up to a sheriff's notice nailed to your door, demanding you vacate the home you'd poured your life savings into, all because of a petty $387 fine for a lawn violation. For Thomas, a hardworking black engineer who'd finally achieved the American dream in an upscale suburban neighborhood, this wasn't just bureaucracy gone wrong. It was a calculated assault, laced with the bitter sting of racism, orchestrated by Karen, the iron-fisted HOA president who saw his very presence as a threat. As eviction loomed, the truth unraveled in court, exposing a web of prejudice that would leave everyone stunned. What happens when justice finally fights back? Thomas had always dreamed of stability, a place where his family could thrive without the shadows of his urban upbringing. After years of late nights in engineering labs, he saved enough to buy a modest two-story home in Willow Creek Estates, a gated community known for its manicured lawns and affluent residents. The neighborhood gleamed with promise, wide streets lined with blooming gardens, children playing freely, and a sense of belonging that Thomas craved for his wife and young daughter. But beneath the surface, whispers of exclusion lingered, especially for someone like him, a black man in a predominantly white enclave. From the start, subtle signs emerged. Neighbors glanced away during evening walks, and anonymous notes appeared in his mailbox, hinting at fitting in. Then came Karen, the HOA president, a middle-aged woman with a clipboard perpetually in hand and a gaze that sharpened like a blade. She patrolled the streets daily, enforcing rules with zeal, but Thomas noticed her scrutiny fell heavier on him. His mailbox, painted a subtle shade of blue to match his home's trim, was deemed non-compliant within weeks of his move-in. A $50 fine followed, then another for a garden hose left uncoiled overnight. Curiosity built as Thomas wondered if this was mere coincidence. He mowed his lawn meticulously, yet citations piled up for minor infractions others ignored. Grass clippings on the sidewalk, a trash bin visible from the street. The fines escalated to $387, a sum that seemed trivial but carried an undercurrent of something darker. Whispers from a few sympathetic neighbors revealed Karen's history, complaints about changing demographics at HOA meetings, veiled remarks about property values dropping with certain types moving in. Thomas felt the weight of isolation, his dream home turning into a battleground as the setup for confrontation loomed inevitably. Tension simmered as the fines mounted, each notice from Karen arriving like a predator's warning. Thomas, determined not to let prejudice erode his hard-earned foothold, began documenting everything. He photographed his pristine yard, compared it to neighbors' unkempt edges that went unpunished, and noted how Karen's inspections bypassed the white families with similar violations. One evening, as dusk settled over Willow Creek, he spotted her lingering outside his fence, clipboard in hand, her eyes narrowing at the small vegetable garden he'd planted, a nod to his grandmother's traditions. The next day, a $100 fine arrived for unauthorized landscaping, claiming it disrupted the community's aesthetic uniformity. Emotional stakes heightened when Thomas's wife noticed the strain. Sleepless nights followed, with their daughter asking why Daddy seemed so worried. The racism, once subtle, sharpened into overt aggression. Anonymous calls to child services hinted at neglect in the home, baseless but chilling. Thomas uncovered emails from HOA records, obtained through a public request, where Karen referred to him as that outsider who didn't belong, rallying board members to protect our standards. It wasn't just about fines. It was a campaign to drive him out, rooted in the deep-seated bias that viewed black success as an intrusion. As weeks turned to months, the pressure intensified. Karen escalated by filing liens on Thomas's property, turning the $387 debt into a legal noose. Notices warned of foreclosure if unpaid, ignoring Thomas's attempts to appeal. He attended an HOA meeting, feeling the rooms chill as eyes avoided him, Karen presiding with smug authority. Whispers of similar stories from other minority families surfaced online, evictions over trivial matters, all under the guise of rules enforcement. Thomas's research revealed a pattern. In communities like Willow Creek, HOAs often weaponized bylaws against people of color, echoing historical redlining that kept neighborhoods segregated. The emotional toll deepened. Thomas's job performance slipped under the stress. His engineering projects delayed as he pored over legal documents late into the night. Friends advised him selling, but he refused, seeing it as surrender to the injustice that had followed his family for generations, from his parents' denied loans to his own overlooked promotions. One stormy afternoon, a process server arrived with eviction papers, claiming the HOA's right to seize the house for unpaid fines. Panic gripped Thomas as he envisioned his daughter uprooted, her sense of security shattered. Yet in this rising storm, resolve hardened. He hired a lawyer, a tenacious advocate experienced in civil rights cases, who uncovered discrepancies in Karen's enforcement, fines waived for white residents, board minutes laced with discriminatory language. The battle lines drew clearer, building towards an inevitable showdown as Thomas prepared to expose the racism festering in the heart of suburbia. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation on the day of the hearing, a stark chamber where fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on polished wood. Thomas sat rigidly, with his hands clasped, as Karen entered with a stack of documents, her posture radiating confidence. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for fairness, reviewed the case. The HOA's attempt to foreclose on Thomas's home over the accumulated $387 in fines now ballooned with penalties. Karen's evidence painted Thomas as a serial violator, her photos showing minor infractions amplified to seem egregious. Intensity peaked when Thomas's lawyer presented the counter-evidence. Document after document revealed the selective enforcement, identical violations by white neighbors ignored, emails from Karen decrying the dilution of the neighborhood's character since Thomas's arrival. Gasps echoed. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Thomas felt a surge of vindication mixed with raw anger, the weight of generations of injustice crystallizing in this moment. The judge's questions cut through the tension, like a knife, probing Karen's motives. Flustered, she stumbled over explanations, her facade cracking under scrutiny. Thomas's side highlighted expert testimony on discriminatory housing practices, linking the case to broader patterns of racial bias in HOAs nationwide. The climax crested when the judge examined the lien itself, declaring it invalid due to procedural errors and evident prejudice. Laughter erupted, not for mockery, but from the absurdity of Karen's overreach, as the judge dismissed the seizure attempt outright, ordering the fines nullified and warning of potential sanctions against the HOA for civil rights violations. Karen's face flushed crimson, her empire of control crumbling in real time, while Thomas exhaled, the emotional release washing over him like a long-awaited dawn. With the gavel's final echo, relief flooded Thomas as he stepped out of the courthouse into the crisp autumn air. The judge's ruling not only voided the fines and liens, but mandated sensitivity training for the HOA board, with Karen stepping down amid community backlash. Thomas returned home to his family, the house no longer a symbol of siege, but of hard-won victory. Neighbors, once distant, offered tentative apologies, and a few even joined him in pushing for inclusive reforms, turning Willow Creek into a more equitable space. The impact rippled outward. Local news covered the story, sparking discussions on racial discrimination in housing associations across the state. Thomas, empowered, shared his experience anonymously online, inspiring others to challenge similar injustices. His daughter, witnessing his father's resilience, grew with a fiercer sense of pride in her heritage. Yet scars remained, the anxiety of those months, the reminder that racism often hides in everyday rules, waiting to ensnare the unwary. This tale, inspired by true events where minority homeowners have fought back against biased HOAs, underscores a vital truth. Prejudice thrives in silence, but exposure dismantles it. Thomas's stand against Karen's bigotry didn't just save his home, it illuminated the shadows where inequality festers, proving that one person's courage can ignite change. What if more of us questioned the rules that unfairly target the marginalized? Reflect on that. Have you seen subtle racism in your own community? Share your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more stories that expose injustice and celebrate triumph. Together, we can build a world where no one has to fight for the right to belong.